Welcome to Identities and Lived Experience, a micro-learning video from Screen Access Alberta. This video is part of a series to help you foster more inclusion on set for all types of screen productions. To learn more about Screen Access Alberta's commitment to diversifying Alberta's film and television industry workforce, visit our website at screenaccessalberta.ca/equity. This training is fundamentally about power and privilege, which can be sensitive topics to talk about because we all have different forms of power and privilege in different situations. It can be humbling to learn just how much privilege we do and don't have in our workplaces and in our communities. Our connection to privilege affects what power we have or feel we have to make change. Understanding more about how power and privilege affect our perceptions, access, and belonging in different contexts can be incredibly helpful as we work to foster safer and more inclusive workplaces. Good topic, right? Yeah, I get it. It can be hard to discuss. It's also a conversation that's often filled with misinformation or misunderstanding. So we're going to try and clear that up and work to make sense of it for everyone. Let's start with terms so we know we're all talking about the same thing. First, power. It's the ability to influence others or decisions. Power comes from a combination of identities and social place in our world. Factors that shape our social place include our race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, first language, where we live, our education, and more. Some of those things can change, while others can't. You don't get power just because you have certain identities, and different parts of your identity will have different degrees of power in different contexts. Let's go through an example. Speaking English as a first language will give you a certain degree of power on a lot of film sets. If you're supporting a production from India that's filming in the Rockies, you might have much more power if your first language is Hindi or Urdu. Remember, our identities can influence how easily we can get power. To continue the example, speaking English as a first language might make it easier to access higher education in Alberta or to meet more people at a networking event. It's not a given you'll have the grades to get into graduate school or the confidence to speak to that producer you really want to meet, but being fluent in the language is a huge asset. Privilege, on the other hand, is something you have simply because of your identities. You have privilege because of who you are, not what you've done. Privilege is essentially means that where you are, you don't have additional barriers or risks because of who you are. Now, privilege does not mean your life has been easy and that you've been handed your accomplishments or that privilege is equal to success. It simply means that your life journey hasn't been made harder because of how you look, whom you love, or what size your body is. All of these experiences shape how we see the world. World views of people in the same place will be different because of our unique identities. Our cultures, backgrounds, genders, and other identities all work together to make us who we are. And because we only know our own experiences, we sometimes get trapped in the idea that everyone else feels the same way. English as an only language, for example, can limit our understanding of how Cree speakers live in the world, since the Cree language recognizes that hills and water and stones are alive. In the next part of this microlearning, we'll talk about recognizing privilege. Privilege can come in many ways. The wheel on this slide includes identity factors around the outside. The largest circle shows the identities with the least amount of power and privilege. Power and privilege are concentrated in the smallest circle in the middle of the wheel. Let's take housing as an example. Folks with the least privilege when it comes to housing tend to be unhoused, where those with the most privilege own property. There are many degrees of privilege between those two, like being in a shelter or having a place to stay with someone else temporarily, to renting housing, to having your own housing but with money owing on a mortgage. The same spectrum applies to each category. Folks who are slim bodied, who have money, and are able bodied tend to have more privilege in most situations than most who are larger, have less money, and experience significant disabilities. No one's access to power and privilege is about their value as a person or how hard they work. We use the wheel to understand which barriers people face compared with others. Power and privilege influence worldview so much, including your sense of justice, right and wrong, community, and much more. Again, you may have power and privilege while having to struggle and overcome obstacles in your life. Having them, you may still be aware of and have empathy for the struggles others face. Power and privilege are simply factors that affect your options when navigating society. They also affect the benefits and opportunities open to you, and that openness might unconsciously shape what you see as normal or common. When you have little power or privilege, your worldview might be shaped more by experiences with social systems that are rooted in oppressive and colonial ideas. You might be more aware of unequal power and hierarchy in society. You may be more likely to expect barriers and see injustices when they occur. Naturally, your experiences will relate to the types of barriers you face, and it's likely you'll see the same barriers you experience more easily than others. Those who live with fewer barriers may not be aware of their devastating effects and underestimate their severity. This is why we have to keep learning, building empathy and compassion for people with lived experiences that differ from our own. People around us may be dealing with discrimination and oppression. We have the chance to step in and make life easier. If you have more power and privilege in certain areas, use them to show solidarity with those who don't. Advocate for their rights and ability to receive justice and equal access in systems. Systems are most responsible for directing the power and privilege we have. Because all systems are created by people, we can change them. A big part of reflecting on privilege is what is called critical reflexivity. Critical reflexivity is a tool to better understand your own experiences with power and privilege. It brings together the skills of critical thinking and self and systems reflection. Using it means taking a moment to pause, reflect on, and understand how your own set of identities and lived experiences may be, or not, influencing your perspectives on a particular issue or the decisions you're making. There are three key parts. The first is to question the things we take for granted that shape our actions. These would be things like our biases, assumptions, beliefs, and worldviews. We challenge what we think is normal or what we expect to experience in different situations. Next is to reflect on how our social position influences what we know about the world. We can use the wheel from a few moments ago to look at how our identities keep us close to or far from power. And finally, we think about how our knowledge is also shaped by context, history, and power. This means learning about history from different perspectives and thinking about how various economic and political systems and decisions affect people in different ways. Ultimately, it means being aware that while your identities and experiences are central to who you are as a person, the same is also true for everyone else. Your experience, they're yours and yours alone. It's a call to approach situations with grace and curiosity rather than judgment and close mindedness. As we mentioned, critical reflexivity is just one step in the process of understanding power and privilege. The next step is action. Here are 3 ways to approach critical reflection and move into action. First, internal self-reflection. This is a way to explore our own biases, assumptions, and worldview. How? Consider how you may have in the past wrongfully or stereotypically thought about groups to which you don't belong. Did any experiences change your mind? Why? Think about whether any stereotypes or prejudicial assumptions affect how you view yourself, especially as you think about the different identities you embody. Now, consider how you can interrupt those assumptions and erase those stereotypes in ways that will change your choices now and in the future. Second, let's think about how we wield power. We've talked about how in different identities we'll have different amounts of power in different situations. So let's consider ethical ways to use that power. Look back and think about how you've wielded power in your life when it's been available to you. Have you used it in a way that intentionally or not may have harmed others or helped others? If so, what informed your decision? And how can you replicate helping others in the future? Think about the people in your life. This could be anyone, a boss or a colleague, a friend, a family member, a community member, or a teacher. Have you seen them use power for their own benefit at the expense of others? Have you seen them use their power to help those around them? Which elements of privilege were in play? Which weren't? Now think about the people you look up to. This could also be someone in your life, or it could be someone you don't know, but you know something about. How did they wield power? What kinds of actions did they take that you wish you could do too? And now, what are some reasonable actions you could take to use your power and privilege for good? Doing this might be uncomfortable. In fact, it probably will be. But the result is knowing what is in the realm of possibility for you. These first 2 elements really focus on our interpersonal actions. Who are we with others? Are we the people we want to be when it comes to using power to lift everyone up? And if not, how can we become the people we want to be? The last piece is to explore the systems we engage with and how we can use privilege and power to make social change for more people. Give some thought to how you can use power and privilege to support communities and people who have less access and control. Make space for those with less access and power, and then step aside so they can occupy that space. This might feel risky, but remember, there's plenty of power and privilege to go around. This is about considering how you can also think about how you may use power and privilege to make changes in systems and policies. Making system change might feel like a major undertaking, but it's possible by doing one thing at a time. Even something as small as spending money on products made by people with less privilege helps to redistribute money in the economic systems. Even if it's a little bit, every small step adds up, and before you know it, those choices become the new normal. It's important for those with privilege to use it as a tool and to give up power and comforts when it matters most and when you need to stand in solidarity with others. Growth and anti-oppression are not comfortable. We have to do uncomfortable things to change systems. Feel the discomfort, sit with it, and let it inspire you to keep your hope or to drive you to take action. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about power and privilege so you can promote better on-set inclusion. For more information, microlearning videos, and resources to help build inclusive on-set experiences, visit the Screen Access Alberta website at screenaccessalberta.ca/equity.